As you're starting out, why are you showing up in the morning? And so thinking about dentistry, if you're super, super excited about doing that perfect, majestic filling on a tooth, there's nothing wrong with that. If you want your clinical excellence to be your big thing, and that's how you're going to market, that's how you're going to present yourself, and that's how you're going to prove to your customers about who you are, then that's great. You will attract technician-minded people that love supporting that.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of The Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7- and 8-figure businesses, as well as the founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where he helps startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. You ever need help with yours? Just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Now, today we've got another great guest on the podcast, Tim Richardson. And Tim started out his journey. His father was an optometrist and owned his own practice. And his dad ingrained in him to be his own boss. And so went off to college and started out in medicine. People told him he should go into dentistry. So he switched over to dentistry and specialized in pediatric dentistry. And then afterwards moved to Oregon as an associate dentist with the new practice. Not the owner yet. Learned a lot, made plenty of mistakes, purchased a practice. Started 2 additional practices, started to go a different direction than the business partner. So he sold his ownership in the business and then started a new practice in 2017, doing things a bit different than the industry norm, and has now grown it to, I think, 6 clinics over the past 5 years. So with that much as an introduction, welcome on the podcast, Tim.
Thanks, Devin. Happy to be here.
Hey, happy to have you on and excited for a great conversation. So I just took a much longer journey and condensed it in the 30-second version of the journey. But why don't we rewind and unpack things a bit? So tell us a little bit how your journey got started with your dad owning his own optometrist practice and then grading in you to be your own boss.
Yeah, that was a really good overview, actually. My father just small practice as an optometrist. I remember very frequently going on a family vacation, and he would make some sort of a comment about how he wasn't making any income and he was still paying the bills. So it's kind of a double whammy as a small business owner. And but he also did ingrain the intention to always make sure that you have a voice on how your business operates. Whether you're the owner, I mean, it's not a simple solution, but it's a easily describable solution. And so that's kind of how it merged. I was looking for healthcare. I wanted to be involved with people and health, and looked at veterinary medicine, looked at podiatry, had zero interest in dentistry until a friend of mine just convinced me to go and observe a dentist and see it from the provider's perspective rather than the patient's perspective, and immediately fell in love with it. And it checked off all of my boxes. It was healthcare. It was service oriented. It was something I could be proud of providing for the customers or the patients, and had flexibility and quite a bit of autonomy compared to medicine, which is why a lot of the physicians were telling me, "Hey, it's not how it used to be. It's not the small town doctor that kisses babies when they're in the grocery store." And that's kind of how I wanted. I actually live in a small town, and I don't kiss babies in grocery stores, but I do see patients, see families when I'm out and about, and we get excited to see each other because of what we've experienced together. And so it fits my lifestyle, though I've turned it into a lot more of a business than just a medical profession. And now have a group practice with other fantastic doctors and team members that help with the vision.
So now you just jumped over a good portion of the journey. So I'm going to rewind and unpack that a little bit more. So makes sense. So you started out in medicine. You had someone, could basically convince you, hey, dentistry is really what's more going to be in line with what you want, and
Right.
kind of the small town feel, and be able to have that more of that down to earth relationship, and and have or that kind of path with the what you went into. Now, what made you decide to, before we get too far in your journey, because I think you went originally into dentistry but then specialized in pediatric dentistry, so do you just
Right.
love kids and love them screaming at you as you're working on their mouth, or what took you into the direction of pediatric?
Yeah, I could do without the screaming, that's for sure. Still have a ringing in my ear, I think, from once a day. But when I first started dental school, I did not know that pediatric dentistry was a specialty. I was planning on being a family doctor, seeing kids as well. I like kids. I have 6 kids of my own, so I better like kids. And about halfway through, we started learning about the different specialties, and the pediatric dentists that came from the communities who talked to us about their specialty. It just seemed like they were having so much more fun. They enjoyed what they were doing so much more than just the technical part of it. It was more than just clinical excellence. It was more about helping a child to be healthy and confident in the way they look and the way that they feel. And dentistry has a very big contribution to that. And so I told my wife, I'm like, I'm sorry. I know we were planning on just practicing right out of school, but how about another 2 years of school? And so we did it, and I'm so glad that we did, because it really has helped me solidify who I want to be as a provider and the impact that I want to have on the communities that we serve, taking care of that most vulnerable, most innocent population of kids, and particularly those that are underserved and on Medicaid insurance who have very limited options of where they can go, because most dentists do not work with Medicaid insurance. And so that's a big influence on the work that we do.
No, sounds like a great option. So you say, okay, you go to your wife and say, hey, I know that I told you we were only going to be so much school, but let's go a couple more years. And my wife kind
Yeah.
of probably feels about the same way. So I
And
ended
move
up
halfway
going.
across the country while we're doing it. Sure.
And I definitely understand that. I mean, I ended up getting 4 degrees and we're going to school for 9.5 years. So not quite to the level of dentistry and a doctor, but I'm not far behind it. And my wife
Yeah.
had to tag along, and I kept just getting that one more degree until I was at the
Yeah.
place I wanted. But you
Mm-hmm.
go into pediatric and that specialty for pediatric dentistry. And then I think after you graduated, you moved to Oregon and started working
Right.
for someone's practice.
Yeah. Work with, I should say, for another pediatric dentist who had 3 other offices at the time, not in this area, not anywhere close. And I was going in because that pediatric dentist practiced the way that I was wanting to practice, seeing a lot of kids, seeing all kids, all insurance types, including Medicaid or no insurance at all, and making that work. And did a lot of orthodontics. I was very interested in also incorporating that into the pediatric practice. And so I came in under that umbrella, and the practice I came into was brand new. It was created, opened when I started, and really was given full autonomy of that practice, and um, learned a lot, made a lot of mistakes, a lot of learning opportunities, helped define who I wanted to be as I was able to, a little bit of a trial and error uh, with treatment planning specifically to patients, a little bit outside of just textbook treatment planning, and also particularly how to build a team around that that has the same mindset on how to take care of those kids, customizing every single appointment for them, and even sometimes within the appointment changing plans based on the mood of the child or the squirminess factor, or sometimes the parent dynamic also influencing how we are able to take care of that child in the best way possible.
No, sounds like it was a great training ground, and provided a great opportunity for you. So now, how long did you stay at that practice, and how long did you kind of stay in the associate position?
Let's see, it was about a year and 3 months or so when I decided that that's not where I wanted to be long term, or the group that I wanted to be in long term. And long story short, ended up purchasing that practice from the owner,
Hmm.
um, a little less than 2 years from when I started there. And so it was essentially a full-time clinic. I was working there 4 days a week and working in another location 2 hours away 2 days a week. So I was practicing 6 days a week because I thought I was leaving. I was transitioning out. So I backtracked a little bit, brought on another doctor to associate with me in that practice. And rather than just work 4 days a week, like a lot of dentists really enjoy doing, I said, well, how about I just open up another clinic and transition those extra 2 days to the new clinic? And so I continued to practice 6 days a week for the most part. Started another clinic, brought on another associate to take those two new practices. So 3 doctors, 3 clinics altogether. And had a business partner, like you mentioned. And it was interesting how during that time, those first couple of years of business ownership, practice ownership, I was really changing a lot and realizing the way that I wanted to practice dentistry was somewhat stable. That wasn't changing a whole lot, but the way I wanted to operate a business was changing significantly. And that was creating some tension points with my business partner on how we both saw how to operate the business. And long story short, I was burned out. I was, again, practicing dentistry 6 days a week is extremely hard on your body, on your back and your neck. And I was too young to start having those issues, and I was having those issues. And I didn't want to go on disability and collect disability for the rest of my working career. And so I sold my portion of ownership. The dentists that were there took over ownership, and it was a great reset, and got relatively healthy again, and started working on a new clinic with
Well,
a very hard
just
reset.
one question just to dive in. So I mean, you sold your portion of the ownership, and now was that with the intent? Did you kind of say, hey, once I sell this, I want to go start my own practice, go my own direction, set it up how I want, kind of go out of the box? Or was it just more of, hey, burned out, tired, want to do something different, don't know what that is, I'll figure it out, but right now I just need a break? Or, kind of how did you make that transition, or what was that process of going from, putting in a lot of time, money, and effort to building a practice to making the exit, or from that practice?
Yeah, I actually was fully intending to open the new practice before I even sold. And it was actually in the town that I now live in. I'd already moved to this small town of 10,000 people. And that was one of the discussion points with my business partner is, hey, I think this would be a great location for a pediatric dental office. But if you just look at the census data on the town, there's not enough people here. But I knew, just being familiar with the area, that the geographic area, a little more semi-rural area, takes in a large geographic space, knowing that because of that, we would have plenty of patients to draw from and have a busy practice. And so I did it and proved my former business partner wrong, and we were off to the races. And started a second clinic 3 months later. So it was a really very, very fast ramp up.
No, makes sense. So you touched on a little bit, and I think we even chatted a little bit before the podcast that, as you're going into setting up this new practice, sold your ownership in the previous practice, wanted to do something a bit different. What was kind of that things that you wanted to do different, or how did you go about kind of approaching it in a different manner that, as you're setting things up, so that you didn't just kind of repeat what the previous experience was?
It had mostly to do with how we took care of our team members. The patient care was never really a question, but back then it was very easy to hire, and it was easy to find people, and didn't, compared to now, didn't have to pay nearly as much. I think they're making almost double now compared to just 5 years ago, or dental assistants specifically. And I knew that the way that we were taking care of our team members was not sustainable. We were asking too much without enough in return, and it just didn't sit right with me, being the person on the team working with those team members. And largely, I was part of the problem too. It wasn't just my business partner; it was me too. And trying to make those changes, it kind of was throwing a wrench in the system, about actually planning for and taking time to just come together, like, team building time. And a lot of people don't want to spend time at work outside of work, right? They don't want to have the after hours or the weekend events, although we do lots of that too. But we needed dedicated time, regularly dedicated time for us to grow as individuals and for us to grow as a team. And that was not being accommodated for. It was just work, 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 get as much done as we can, as fast as we can. And we were all getting burned out. And so we reset. And I also didn't really appreciate the traditional manager style that still exists largely within dentistry, where I mean, it's common in other industries too, where you have maybe a really good dental assistant, for example, and they're ready to move on to a different phase of their career. Common move is into an office manager position. So you have a really good dental assistant that now transitions to an administrative role, primarily taking care of people and processes rather than doing the processes themselves with their own two hands. And nobody trains them how to make that transition to their job description. I think, oh, you did this job really well, therefore you can manage other people to do this job really well. It's a completely different skill set, and more importantly, a very different mindset going into that role, into leadership. And a lot of people find out that they actually don't like it. They don't like the leadership, and I think it's largely because they haven't been prepared for it, haven't been trained for it, and aren't supported through it either. And it's nice to see that, especially post-COVID, right? We've made a lot of progress with being mindful of our team members, because we have to, or else they'll leave. They have so many more options now than they did 5-6 years ago. And thankfully, we were a little bit ahead of the curve in that regard of attracting good people, having clear values to our business beyond just having clinical excellence. That I knew that I wanted my team members to have growth opportunities, and I don't just mean career growth, I mean personal growth, which may or may not involve career progression. Some people just like being in a certain role for many, many years. It's not called career. There's nothing wrong with that. But we can still help them to grow as a person and have that impact their personal lives outside of the workplace.
No, sounds like you figured out a great balance, a great approach, and it worked out well. And that kind of leads to the next question, which is, catches up a bit into the future. So or to the present, not to the future. I don't know how you catch up to the future.
I live in the future myself, even when I'm in the present. So
but
I
you
understand
catch up to the present. So I mean, you made the leap. You did that. I think you now have 6 different clinics or different locations. You've grown the team. Walk us through a little bit of where you guys are at today. Was it a good decision? You do it again? Was it a terrible decision? Wish you could go back in time and change it, or kind of how's it gone?
Wow, that's a loaded plethora of questions there. I do things different now than I did with the reset, if that makes sense. So when I started Acorn Dentistry for Kids, I did it one way. Now we do it differently. But the intention has always been the same, because we were literally recreating a new leadership structure, new workplace hierarchy, if you want to call it that, organizational chart, and had to figure some things out, and did a lot of things the wrong way because we were doing a lot of trial and error. For example, we had no office manager, which no one I know of in dentistry has ever done that before, because I didn't appreciate the way that office managers, from my perspective, what I had seen and experienced, I didn't appreciate that relationship. And so we said, we're just going to have really strong doctor leaders and provide personal growth opportunities with self-leadership, self-accountability, and just have amazing people. That sounds really good in theory. It sounds really good if you're making a presentation to a bunch of people in a room, but in practice, it was going against human nature. People need structure to be successful. Your culture will follow the structure that you have in place, your organizational structure even, and the different emphases that you have with each of the roles within that organizational structure. So what that led to was a lot of people, a lot of turnover, because they're saying, hey, I need help, and there was no one there to help. Even a strong doctor isn't available to support someone when you're busy all day seeing patients. They don't want to spend their lunch break. They don't want to spend after hours, not regularly at least, to be able to get the help and support they need or get the additional training that they need. So what that transitions to was I found out about this thing called coaching. And I grew up playing sports, so I knew what a sports coach was, but I had never heard of coaching in the workplace, and that actually being a style of leadership within the workplace. And so we tried some things, but we now have what we call a clinic coach instead of an office manager. And a lot of our clinic coaches, excuse me, I got a little tickle in my throat. A lot of our clinic coaches have no dental background whatsoever because that is not their first priority. They don't have to know how to do dentistry. They learn it when they get here, but that's not the skill set that we're looking for. What we're looking for is someone who is people first, not process first. The process is second. And so more focused on, so office manager, generally focused on the process of being done by people. Clinic coach is going to be more focused on the people performing the processes. And something that my own personal coach that I eventually became a client of, he talks a lot about you don't have to be an Olympic swimmer in order to coach an Olympic swimmer. You do need to understand the fundamentals of swimming. You need to know how to swim, but you are not the expert. What you're able to offer is something very different than expertise. What you can offer is perspective. You can offer support. You can offer encouragement. You can create a structure for someone to help them to thrive. And that's made by mutual agreements. It's not made by dictatorial edicts. It is through conversation and identifying how exceptional does this person even want to be in the first place. And now let's create a pathway for that person to get there, meeting them where they are, not where we wish they were in the moment. Where are they headed? What's their trajectory? And can we help them to get there? And that is has such a broader scope than making sure they know how to clean teeth well. That's the easy part. So we've transitioned to a coaching culture is what we call it. And it has been an amazing journey. Just the stories of how strong our teams are becoming. And it's largely based on our organizational values that we have. And that's a big buzzword in the business world now. And do you have a vision of where you want to go as a team? Do you have a purpose of why you even show up in the morning? Who cares? Right? Why does anybody care that you're there? Do you have values that determine the type of person that you want to have on your team that aligns with where you're wanting to go and the way in which you're going to do it too? Not just what do we do, it's how do we do it and why.
Awesome. No, I think that's some great takeaways, some great thoughts, as well as fun to hear kind of where that's led you and how it's affected your practice as of today. So perfect. Well, now as we've reached the present day of your journey, always a great time to transition to the two questions I always ask at the end of each episode. So we'll jump to those now. So the first question I always ask is, along your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made? What'd you learn from it?
Worst business decision I made has often been trying to force something to work when it's not working. And a lot of times that has to do with the people. I sometimes I think have too big of a heart and would try and maybe have expectations for people. I could see someone's potential and basically get frustrated with, why aren't you there? And yet I was not acknowledging my role in helping them to get there. And that happens far too many times. I don't know that there's anything I could have done differently because I was a different person back then than I am now. But that is something I wish I would have been able to learn earlier on in helping other people within our business. And so through those errors, I guess I've learned, one is, does the person even want to get there? Yes or no? If it's a no, then that's an easy decision. Move on. It's better for you. It's better for them. It's better for your team.
Hmm.
But if they do want to get there and you've identified it, now it's still on you as the leader to make sure that they have the resources and support to get there. They can't do it alone. It's too exhausting. I tried to do that myself and I got burned out. So how could I possibly expect anyone else to do that? So we've created much more of a supportive environment for people to get where they want to go personally, professionally, and financially as well.
No, I think that's definitely a a good mistake to learn from. I think it's an easy one to make, in the sense that, we always, one thing is that, I think a lot of times if you're entrepreneurial minded or business minded, oftentimes you're kind of, or start out, especially when you're less experienced or getting earlier on in your journey, that you feel like, hey, everybody's going to do an awesome job. They're all going to be as excited as I am. They're all going to be as gung ho. And then you
Yeah,
kind of find out, not everybody is as gung ho, and
yeah,
not everybody's involved. And some people are there just to work and they enjoy it, or to get a paycheck. And there's a lot of different motivations and how to get them there, or how to, if they want to get there, and making that determination, I think is definitely an easy mistake to make, but a great one to learn from.
yeah. And something that really helps with that is the clearer we can communicate what that purpose is, the easier it's going to be to find those people that do want to go along with where we're trying to get. And even if they don't have business ownership,
Hmm.
people really need an emotional connection to the work that's being done if they're going to be an amazing team player and have that be sustainable for them.
No,
They'll put in their blood, sweat, and tears if they're emotionally connected with your purpose and aligned with your values. If they don't, it's exhausting and it's just work, and they'll get burned out and move on.
no, that's definitely a great piece of advice and a great thing to learn. So now we're going to jump to the second question I always ask, which is, now if you're talking to someone that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what'd be the one piece of advice you'd give them?
Well, I kind of already alluded to that, I guess. As you're starting out, why are you showing up in the morning? And so, thinking about dentistry, if you're super, super excited about doing that perfect, majestic filling on a tooth, there's nothing wrong with that. If you want your clinical excellence to be your big thing, and that's how you're going to market, that's how you're going to present yourself, and that's how you're going to prove to your customers about who you are, then that's great. You will attract technician-minded people that love supporting that. For us, pediatric dentistry, our purpose is more about the experience that we provide. We know that squirmy, wormy 3-year-old is not going to sit still to get a beautiful filling done, but we may do something that's sufficient for the time being to temporarily keep that tooth healthy, but still have them laugh through it and get high fives and hugs after we're done. And then the 3-year-old, as they're leaving the dental office, says, "Mommy, when can I go back to the dentist?" Even though they just had some dental work done. Or we have kids that have asked to have their birthday parties at the dental office because they love how they are treated, and seen as a child, this space is for them. It's not for their parent. It is for them, and it's all about the kid. And so again, just what is your purpose? Why are you doing what you do? That will then determine how you are going to do it. And
Hmm.
lastly is, what's the actual skill set that you need to develop in order to prove and do it consistently, do it well. So it's very much a Simon Sinek way of thinking. I'm sure a lot of your listeners will recognize the Golden Circles TED talk that he gave several years ago.
No, I think
Why,
that
how, and then what. So very much aligned with that.
absolutely, and I think that's a great piece of advice, a great TED talk for those who want to check it out, and a great takeaway. So Well, now as we wrap up the episode, if people want to reach out to you, they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be a patient, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, find out more?
Yeah, so I'm on Facebook, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm not a rabid social media user, but I am on there. Post meaningful things. You can find me there, Tim Richardson, in Oregon. Acorn Dentistry for Kids is our pediatric dentistry group in Oregon. So that's the website address, Acorn Dentistry for Kids. If people want to reach out directly to me specifically, I now do coaching as well, specifically helping leaders and organizations to identify, develop, and implement their own coaching culture for their group and for their teams. So I'm excited to do more of that work. So Tim Richardson DDS at gmail.com is my email address. That's the easy way to find me.
Awesome. Well, definitely a lot of great ways to reach out, connect, and whether it's looking for a great pediatric dentist or just your next best friend, definitely encourage people to reach out. So with that, thank you again for coming on the podcast. It's been fun. It's been a pleasure. Now, for all of you, the listeners that are out there, if you have your own journey to share and you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, we'd love to have you. So just go to inventiveguest.com, apply to be on the show. Couple more things as listeners, make sure to click share, subscribe, and leave us a review. Helps us to reach even more startups and small businesses to help them along their journey to success. And last but not least, if you ever need help with your patents or trademarks or anything else with your startup, your small business, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Well, thank you again, Tim, for coming on the podcast, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Thanks very much, Devin.